AI being leveraged is with enhancing content quality and reliability. Number one, you have fact checking and editorial standards that would help bolster that in that respect, and transparency and reporting, basically to help disclose sources, correcting errors, etc. And then like where it's more relevant for like what we do, particularly with helping publishers either increase monetization or protect monetization, would either be with protecting user data and privacy.
Welcome to the Pubway podcast. Each episode will showcase a conversation with a leader from the publishing world. If you're working at a publisher, a DSP or SSP, or you're just curious about the media industry and want to sit down and pick the brains of the experts from within the publishing space, then this is the show for you. Featuring Don Valdez. This episode was recorded during his time as head of Adtech and publisher partnerships at the Media Trust. Hello, and welcome to the Pubway podcast. My name is Tina Yanakino.
And I'm Mike Villalobos. Today we're going to talk about how AI is impacting targeting and how publishers can effectively collaborate with their brand and agency counterparts.
In today's episode, we have the amazing Don Valdez on with us, who is the head of Adtech and publisher partnerships at the Media Trust. Don, thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
I would love if you could just give a brief background on your career thus far for our audience. And then I think it'd also be helpful to just recap a little bit who the Media Trust is for anyone who's not familiar.
100%. So currently, I'm the head of partnerships at the Media Trust, covering down on ad tech and publishers. And what we do is that main point is to help keep the internet safe. So when it comes to any digital asset, whether it be on a tablet, display, app, we make sure that we help those entities keep consumers safe. We are cousins to IS and Double Verify, where they protect brand safety and whatnot and help spend budgets, but we are on the other side actually protecting consumers. With that said, how I got to working at the Media Trust is my background is in actual media, whereas if you went and asked my colleagues what they did, 90% of them would be focused on cybersecurity, right? And a lot of people are pretty surprised when they learn that about the Media Trust. I would say more than a decade ago, about like 15 years ago, I started off on the brand side at a company called Wiley, and then eventually made my way to being a publisher, was at a big pub, Time Inc., around a decade ago when they spun off Time Warner. Then made my way to the agency side, did a stint with Omnicom Media Group and Acuin, and then eventually made my way to being one of the vendors, right? Joined the dark side in a tech platform and made my way to the Media Trust. So that's how I'm here today.
Very cool. And I mean, we'd love to hear how you guys are actively providing, I think, the protection against content. Is it more on the content itself, or the misinformation of the content, or just generally like botted traffic? What exactly is the help there?
Of course, it's everything. So with my focus on the lines of business, with regards to ad tech platforms, whether it be like SSPs or DSPs, it'd be more so pre-flight, right? So when, let's say like an SSP or DSP, they have unique creative ideas coming in. And all that means to everyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, it's just like the ad tag, right? Like when the actual unique creative ID comes in, and we'll just say like no free shout out for Coca-Cola, an ad for Coca-Cola comes in, right? We're like for the pre-flight stuff, we're gonna go ahead and scan the tag. Then we'll actually scan the content. So whether it be display native, video or audio, we'll make sure that depending on the ad philosophy of our partner, whether it violates their policies, and then holistically, we're going to go ahead and scan a landing page on the display native side. There's not usually a landing page tagged to like video or audio, right? So that's for ad tech platforms. When it comes to publishers in real time, that's the difference. Like for ad tech platforms, it's pre-flight usually, and for publishing partners, it's real-time protection. So say Don Valdez is visiting abc.com, and I go on site, and whether it be the app on display, et cetera, et cetera, the media trust helps that publisher protect the consumer, Don Valdez, from getting hit, number one, with malware, phishing scams, etc. Right? Like that's our bread and butter is the malvertising. But then you can take it a step further into the content. So if like if I have a publisher that's sensitive to alcohol brands or whatever type of brand, we help them surgically block, or we help them surgically make decisions on whether Don Valdez gets that type of advertising in real time. And then like on the deeper end, we also do help both sides of our types of partners with data governance, so to make sure that the ad rendering is in compliance with the specific region, whether it be GDPR, CCPA, et cetera.
End-to-end solutions. I'm gonna dial it back really quickly and kind of give you a quick softball, but I would love to get your thoughts on this. But how do you see AI playing into the publisher's business or tech stack? Actually, I saw this random white paper that came out where people from Goldman Sachs are actually hedging against AI, saying it might be a 12 to 18 month bubble because it's $1 trillion market, right? Which I think is fair. Which is fair to, I think, evaluate given Nvidia's pop and how it's moved the Nasdaq. But while it's such a big mover at the moment, is it solving $1 trillion problem? And what's the problem, right? But it's also kind of because it is so amorphous. People are confused as to, okay, there might be some legs there, but like the internet, there was no problem. People were just building it.
What's interesting is like the last few weeks into like a couple of months is that what I'm also starting to focus on with the media trust is that they want me to branch back out into talking to brands and agencies. So like this, I promise this will tie into what publishers are doing, right? And on the brands and agency side, we've like time and time again, like throughout the years, it goes longer than, like our careers, right? And you have agency workers that like are, they're always working crazy hours, they're like underpaid, et cetera, et cetera. And they would leverage AI just to save time. And that's what we say with publishers and ad tech platforms is that we would leverage AI to make things more efficient operationally, right? Do you want me to go into like specific examples for publishers with regards to AI?
Yeah, I think that would be super helpful. We always try to bring like the publisher lens to this if we can. So,
of course, no, yeah, 100%. Like so, publishers specifically, like, and then I could also go into like ad targeting as well. But like for publishers specifically, when I put my pub hat on, I also worked at a smaller publisher, Task and Purpose. And I believe I forget like who owns them now, but Task and Purpose is a military veteran publication, right? And having that chance to work with, I wasn't the corporate evil ad guy anymore, trying to bring in revenue. I also got to work hand in hand with the editors and reporters, right? And so where I see AI being leveraged is with enhancing content quality and reliability. So number one, you have like, fact checking and editorial standards that would help bolster that in that respect, and transparency and reporting, basically to help disclose sources, correcting errors, etc. And then like where I feel like where it's more relevant for like what we do, particularly with helping publishers either increase monetization or protect monetization, would either be with protecting user data and privacy, right? Like we have use AI to have better data encryption, privacy policies, and compliance with regulations. Like I was saying with the media trust, we help out our partners with governance, whether it be beat a dead horse, GDPR, CCPA, et cetera, et cetera. Is this helpful? Is this what you guys are looking for?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think too, it does become like a programmatic whack-a-mole. I think if we can all effectively use AI to help in that decision making to better automate those processes, whether that's cloaking and maybe using like computer vision before the bid to read the creative, or if it's truly just like a bad ad and malintent. There's a number of
tools we can use in a much more efficient way, that I think there's still some smoke and mirrors around. But it's great to see certain companies starting to come out with tools to help publishers and brands and agencies be just better informed about those systems. But I would love to hear from you kind of, how have you, being at the Media Trust, seen publishers specifically help kind of build up that trust from their users? You kind of touched on like GDPR and CCPA, but are there any certain solutions you've seen be more effective for certain publishers versus others?
Yeah, like I think what is more effective with with publishers in general, they're similar to how the agency was and is that particularly with like consolidation and tough times with how they're going to get like eyeballs to their sites, right? That means that most publishers are running on like skeleton crews, and you're going to need these tools to have like workflow optimization. I think one thing that publishers who are definitely strapped for cash shouldn't do is just categorically block and not be surgical with what's coming in, right? Like, because so for instance, we do have publishing partners who are very sensitive to alcoholic brands, right? But we also do know that companies like Budweiser have non-alcoholic products, right? So if you just simply categorically block and don't and are not surgical with that, you lose out to um, impactful revenue. And it has happened with recent partners who have joined the Media Trust when they were looking for a more surgical solution, because with some of the providers that they used, they were missing out on all that revenue because of the blocking, and the inclusion and exclusion lists were not thoughtfully carried out. It's definitely like how we execute that is the mix of AI and making sure that us as humans are double checking AI's work, right? Like AI can handle the scale, but we want to make sure that what we're training it to do is actually trying to execute what our partners do. So like I think when it comes to best practices, I did make sure to delineate 9 things that publishers should focus on ideally, and it's not necessarily having to do with what like the Media Trust does, right? Like, so number 1 is I think first and foremost is a transparency and a disclosure, right? And then for us, at the Media Trust, we could also help out with verification and authentication. With verification, you just want to make sure you have strict processes. There are also like bad actors that, like I'm sure people within our industry are aware, but like the layman, like they're just a common consumer, the reader, they're not aware that you have bad actors in different parts of the world. So it's the verification of an identity of advertising affiliations.
Don,
And
random
for
question,
pubs,
Don. In terms of
yeah.
validation or verification, would love to, I mean, and sorry for the tangent here, but I think even looking at content creation through AI in that lens, like sometimes if you can produce at mass, I mean, thousands of articles, right? Because of the generative function of AI, do you think it's necessary to have a watermark or a disclosure that this was created by a machine, not a human, whether it be an op-ed piece or a factual piece?
Fingerprinting,
Exactly.
blockchain, something.
Yes. I like, you know what, like I'll definitely like steal an idea that I heard back in
It's like a borrow, it's
DCN.
fine.
Yeah.
No, that's far, yeah. Like that, like no, but like to like what was very interesting to be in that room is like it's filled with like high profile publishers trying to figure out how can we come together as an industry to make sure that we delineate what is AI created and what is like authentic to the human touch. And I honestly think that is super important. Just because like I said, like people who are not within our industry, they don't have the expert eye, and depending on how like they could be influenced and what's impressionable upon them, I think to the common reader or common consumer, they should know based on the watermark. And I think one thing that I was going to get at with like verification too was to have publishers or platforms require political advertisers to have that 2-factor authentication to secure their accounts in addition to that watermark, just to make sure that the messaging getting through we know is legitimate and not just a creation of an AI or a bad actor. And like with like the direction that was going on is like like leveraging tools to have that type of content moderation and monitoring, right? So in gray areas such as that, like it would be definitely unfortunate if like a very disgraceful ad came through or like malware came through. But if you still did have that content moderation monitoring to at least notify publisher staff, ad ops, whoever's involved in the process, they get notified into like, oh hey, like what, this actually isn't that bad. I'm gonna continue let this through. Or like if something comes into the gray area, we're just like, oh man, like our readers are really going to dislike that. At least they would get notified in a heads up to be. It's not necessarily proactive because it's real time, but it would help inform them make business based decisions.
Also, I'm sorry I cut you off at point 4, so I'll.
Oh no worries, no worries.
Honestly,
Yeah, like I mean, yeah. Well, I don't mean, I definitely don't mean to be neurotic and pedantic. With like all
I mean, like at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're providing value to the listener, right? So, I mean, look, you were on a nice little like roll there, but I could not help myself because I think that was a really good tangent to go on.
Yeah.
No, all good. The next thing would be user education empowerment. Just make sure that like it goes back to being transparent, right? Like having information on how to identify and report suspicious ads or misinformation. For us at the Media Trust, we have capabilities to help publishers with user reported ads, right? So if I'm just Don Valdez visiting abc.com, and by the way, Disney is a client, so just I'm just not throwing weird vibes towards ABC. That like we work with them. Like Don Valdez is the reader on abc.com. I could be like, hey, like I'm not okay with this. And, like I'd be able to utilize user reported ads. And then it wouldn't necessarily block it for the entire ecosystem, but it would ping the ad operations and be like, hey, like a user has a problem with this. And then they could go ahead and a decision on that, right? And then just to quickly move through, it's just like collaboration and information sharing is one thing that I always try to say at conferences, and especially like if I'm on a panel or have a platform, is that the importance of collaboration with publishers, not just publishers to publisher or publisher to partner, but also to get off hands and keyboard and ask questions and have dialogue with the buyers, like just so that everyone could get on the same page. The sentiment and where the source of the advertising has come from, et cetera, so you get a better feel on whether or not you're going to end up blocking that revenue. And like the last two are data privacy, security, and the incident response planning. And I think having tools like the Media Trust also help be proactive with incidents response planning, not just in real time, but with just having everything be a well-oiled machine down the road. And I think I said 9, right? I listed 8. No. So the 9th one is just reporting. Make sure you have the reporting tool so everyone like you're not just saying you do it. Like you could go back to the metrics and say like like this has actually been a well executed plan, or like we could do things better. So it's definitely a transparency in reporting that should be required in anyone's strategy or procedures.
That's fair. I think one thing I wanted to piggyback on those 9, which that was all very helpful.
Yep.
We might want to send over a TLDR after the fact, like, to send out to our LinkedIn post when it comes out. But what I'm thinking is because AI is built off of so many training sets and data sets, and oftentimes you find, I think, publishers not owning their data entirely, or at times not necessarily segmenting it correctly. What do you feel data segmentation is needed more inside the publisher ecosystem? Do you feel like it's being utilized well enough? Like, what's your thoughts on data segmentation for the publishers, and what can be done, like best practices to improve it? Or do you think it's good status quo as is today?
I think that can't be in a blanketed statement. So from we all have like publisher friends, right? And we see some teams that are like, man, like you guys are like are ahead of the curve. And what I would say to that are that I hope those publishers who definitely do have a well-oiled machine are comfortable in the fact to share those best practices with publishers who need help because I think that is very apparent that there is I can't say half, but there is definitely a significant portion of publishers who need to do better. And I think I'm going to say like a shameful plug, partners like Seed Tag and the Media Trust, we can help those publishers have a more cohesive strategy versus just trying to like throw paint at the wall, right? So I think the TLDR is there are centers of excellence, but I think there's definitely like still a lot of improvement. There's not necessarily like there is status quo, but I think there's a lot of room for improvement for our publishing counterparts.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too that unfortunately for the ones who are more of the center of excellence, as you say, they can afford the 6 or 7 figure budgets that takes to build, whether that's via data platforms, the teams you have to then hire to manage those data platforms that you're building out for your own solutions. And that's just not what a lot of the mid to long tail, more of the small business publishers have access to, or frankly, ever will. So they have to look to partners to help them kind of fill those gaps in the meantime in an efficient way that protects their revenue and also helps them increase their revenue over time.
That's super fair. Like, I mean, yeah, that's me overlooking the budget constraints of some of our publishing partners, and like that's super fair. Like, just because, as you pointed out, like with having large, robust data sets, I can't see like long tail publishers doing like micro segmentation or lookalike modeling.
Right.
Yeah.
They would have no time to operate the rest of what they needed to do. So like that's super fair point.
I mean, that also could be an opportunity for AI to build permutations based off of what you're currently getting off of your site visits, right? So if you have, say X amount of uniques, but you just don't have the capital, the human capital to actually go out and like build these models or build these data sets, AI goes in, they segment it based on behavior. That could be something that comes down the pipeline on down the road.
Yeah.
Maybe we built a product without even talking about it or without even trying, but here we are. I don't know.
The think tank.
Exactly. Think tank.
That's where I get myself in trouble. Like if I'm out in market, like just like like spitballing products, and I'm just like I have to go explain myself the product after the conference or something. That's a joke. Like telling my colleagues I don't do that. But,
yeah. No, I think we're all guilty of being like, wow, it'd be really cool. No idea if we could do this, but
yeah, like oh man, like I'm gonna have to speak to the heads of product tomorrow. Like but, yeah.
I mean, let's be clear. It's usually after a bottle of wine.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, look, I think we're winding down on time here, but I think what would be great is I think understanding, if you can like just kind of recap, what do you think the top 2 publishing strategies that could be a takeaway from today's conversation to our listeners? That'd be really great to hear from you. And then we'll have a personal question at the very end, just as a nice little capstone.
Yeah, of course. So the number one thing I think for like companies within who the Media Trust is and what we do, like in protecting the internet, I think like the first strategy with regard to that is like you could speak to my friends at competitors. All we want is for organizations to be responsible and to at least have one of our services enlisted. Like, of course, I'm going to be biased and say us at the Media Trust, we do it the best. But if you're using other companies as my friends to protect the consumer, that's the first step. Just because I do get that we do have budget constraints and whatnot, but I'm pretty sure you can find a company that's willing to work because I think protecting the consumer at the rate of technology, at the rate of how other global actors are being in it, it's very important to protect the consumer of information, right? So just use one of us, have a conversation with us. Like that's the first thing. And the second thing too is I read a meme, but the meme was like so right, or maybe it was like a quick clip, but the clip was like, AI isn't going to steal our jobs. It's the people who use AI well, right? And like it's a race right now. Like it could be so daunting. And like my advice to that is like to not be overwhelmed by it. Just because I remember a decade ago when we were making the transition from traditional programmatic, I remember telling people you had traditional sellers, traditional media, helping out a lot. It's helping out the IAB, teach people about programmatic. I'm like, listen, like if you take a step back, put your head down, start learning, within a couple of weeks, like if you earnestly learn, you don't have to be afraid of programmatic. In the same sense, with AI, you have like so many types of tools out there, not to be afraid, not to push it to the side. Don't just rely on your engineering and tech colleagues to do that. I think it would behoove everyone within our space, within like, the workforce, to be familiar and start like getting good at least at like one or two tools. So number one, use a provider to help protect consumers, and number two, don't be afraid of AI, and start to embrace it and start to learn it on your own. So those be my top two.
Absolutely. And I even recall at IAB ALM this year, I'm forgetting the name of the person who said this, but it was obviously AI was rampant at IAB ALM. And one of the points was, if you're not already using OpenAI or ChatGPT, you're behind it, especially if you're not already paying for the premium version.
Yes.
Like it's only what, 20 bucks a month? Like
yeah,
anyone
we
can
can
do
do that. We can do that.
Amazing. And then to kind of cap it off, I would love to know what is the best advice you've ever received, and if you can remember the worst advice. That's always a fun one.
It's gonna be the same thing, and it's dependent on where I was in my career. The best and worst advice is the same thing, and it's believe in yourself. If you take that without the ellipsis, right? Like when I was like straight out of college, 22, 23 years old, I believed in myself and I thought I could do everything. But the ellipsis was ... You have to work hard to believe in yourself to do something, right? So the worst advice, well, I don't think it was the worst advice. I think that's my fault for not understanding that there was hard work behind the belief in oneself, right?
Yeah, it was a yes and.
Yeah.
So I know, but like now I don't have an answer about the worst advice, but I would say that taking that belief in oneself without doing the work, that would be my fault in perceiving that as the worst advice. But at the same time, when I've grown, like I feel that like it took my 30s to become a mature man into my 40s, right? But like maybe I'm still like an immature boy. No, I don't think so. But I would say like it definitely is important to understand that to not have imposter syndrome, and to understand that like if you take the body of work throughout all the years, through all the experiences, conversations, things you diligently learned, you need to understand that like you should believe in yourself because you did put in the work, and you can't have that imposter syndrome. It's not that you can't, you shouldn't have that imposter syndrome because you did put in the work. So that's my nonsensical advice, or best advice, or worst advice.
Right.
No, and I think that makes sense, especially like blind belief in yourself without doing the work. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
entitled.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's perfect. But that's also being in your early 20s and thinking you're invincible.
Of course.
Cool.
Don, thank you so much for the time, man. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we get to do this again soon.
Yes, thank you.